Hey everybody, welcome to EDU 250. My name is Cindy Dean and I'm your instructor. I hope that you've already viewed the orientation video that I put on the announcements that helps you to understand how the Blackboard site works. I know some of you are veterans to online courses, but some of you may be new to this, so it'll be really good to make sure that you look at that video. And so today I'm going to do a little talking about Chapter 1 in your text and a little bit about the course in general. First of all, EDU 250, Foundations of Education, is meant to be an introductory course to the educational field. I know that some of you may already have a fair amount of education credits under your belt, and that's fine. This course really investigates what it means to be a teacher and looks at some really important topics, including the history of education, the social landscape of education, the politics, the ethics, and more. In this class, you'll have some practice in looking into activities that will help you think about teaching. It'll help you to think about creating your professional portfolio. A teacher portfolio is required for becoming a teacher, both for the UMA program and the UMPI program and the Machias program. They have a little bit different criteria for each one, but nonetheless, when you do go to student teaching, you will have a portfolio that you'll have to construct, and it will be one of the items by which you are scored. So this course gives you an opportunity to begin your portfolio while you're investigating these fundamentals of education. I know many of you are already working in the field, and I welcome your perspectives to the course. It's really great to have different ideas to come to bear on what we're talking about. Today, Chapter 1 is called Why Teach, okay? I've given you the textbook PowerPoint that highlights some of the important aspects of the chapter, but it doesn't have it all. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the items in that particular chapter, and also about I'm going to add a little bit to it. But first, before I go much further, if you don't have your text yet, make sure you do get it, okay? And it looks like this. It's called Teachers, School and Society, and the bookstore ordered the loose leaf variety this semester, which I'm not sure why, but I kind of like it because I can lay it flat. It doesn't fold up on me, but nonetheless, whatever you have is fine. I've had some people ask about the 9th edition. I used that edition right up until this semester. It's pretty close, but there are a few differences. The wrap sections that we will work with are quite different in the 9th edition. So if you're using the 9th edition, let me know, because I need to give you a cross-reference for the standards, and that'll become apparent in a few minutes when I talk about that. The other thing is that one of the chapters, I believe it's the chapter on financing, has some new information in it, particularly about the schools in Finland. So when we get to that particular chapter, I'll give you some supplemental information to make sure that you're getting some of the information. The other changes are relatively minor, but you may hear me reference something that's not in your particular text, so just keep that in mind. Okay, so why teach? You know, it's a good question. A lot of people will look at you and say, "You crazy? Why do you want to do that?" You know, and then if you have a passion for it, you have a passion for it. Just let me back up 1 minute. I know that some of you are not planning to be teachers. I know that some of you are in the ILS program, and that's fine. I welcome you. We enjoy your perspective. I would argue that people who work in libraries really are teachers in their own way. So I think you'll enjoy the work we do, and I'll ask you to do the same work that everybody else does. Okay. So I'd like to reference pages 5 and 7. There's some point and counterpoints there that I think that are really important for us to consider in terms of why would one want to be a teacher and why would one not to be a teacher. So kind of the good and the bad. And so I'm going to go through these points and just add a little bit of information to it. So, point is that when you become a teacher, you're not alone. You're not working in some little cubicle, but you're working with others and you're working with kids. And this is absolutely true. It's a very busy job. You'll find that yourself, you just don't have 2 minutes to yourself. In fact, sometimes it gets rather frenetic. You'll get used to gulping down your lunch in 15 minutes. I still, to this day, have a hard time slowing down eating lunch, even though I have time to do it. But the bad of that is that everybody wants a piece of you, and sometimes it does become a little schizophrenic. So it's point and counterpoint. Another point, the good point, is that it gives you a chance to create and teach well. Kids love you. in some instances, yes, there's nothing any more rewarding than a child or a young adult telling you, you've made a difference in their lives. It really is, it's really very rewarding. But you don't always hear that, and sometimes you don't know about it for many years to come. So what's the bad about that? How can anything be bad about that? No one cares. No professional interaction, little cheering outside the room. So if you're getting into this profession to get patted on the back, it's not the right profession, because even though you do good work, it very seldom does that come. You don't get a big fat bonus in your paycheck at Christmas. You know, those things that the business world may enjoy, the teaching profession does not enjoy. But there are other really good benefits to it as well. Now, when it says no one cares, this can happen as well. There can be instances where you are alone and nobody's supporting you, and you're kind of doing what you can do. But I think that's changing. I think the professionalism of the occupation is changing, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. That's one point in this chapter, is teaching a profession. And I'll hang on to that conversation for just a few minutes. Um, Teaching there's a lot of pride and respect associated with teaching, and there absolutely is. However, in this corporate climate of that's sort of encroaching on education, that pride and respect is becoming um, well, it's becoming diluted. If you read any of the newspapers, you read any of the articles about education, if you have heard the rhetoric coming out of our own state house, you will soon understand that respect is may not be as much as it was in the past. I think we can get it back. There's no reason why we should have lost it to begin with, but I think we need to think about ways of helping people to realize just how hard a job teaching really is. Then again, the counterpoint there is no respect, and that's unfortunately seems to be the prevailing sort of climate these days. A good point, intellectual and stimulating, absolutely. If you want it to be, someone can stagnate in a teaching job too. They can teach the same way for 20 years, or they can be dynamic and outgoing and out there learning new things and sharing new things and working with their colleagues and extending their intellectual background and their knowledge and their pedagogy. Or again, it can be repetition. It can be just doing the same thing over and over again. There's choices to be made here. You get to be creative and you get to be an artist. I think that's absolutely true. However, it can also become mindless and routine if you allow it to. So, I mean, again, a lot of these are choices. You can make a difference. Hang on just a moment, my popping up here. You can make a difference in the lives of children, in the lives of your community. Others would say that's an idealistic goal. You know, it's just impossible. Okay. Is a decent salary? Maybe, depending. Your book gives you some salary ranges, and you should know that the law in the state of Maine is all beginning teachers earn $30,000. That's the minimum. Many schools pay more, but that's the minimum that a beginning teacher is paid in the state of Maine. So, what do you think? Teaching takes commitment. I just need my glasses. I can't read my writing. Sorry. Needs commitment. On a scale of 1 to 10, where do you land? I mean, there's a little quiz in there you can take. So think about it. Think about the goods and the bads, and where you land in all of those. For a discussion forum this week, I'm asking you to really reflect on why teach, why me. Okay. So I spoke a few minutes ago about professionalism of teaching. It's really a long, slow road to having people recognize us as a profession. Are we there? I don't know. There's in your textbook on page 10 that gives you a little bit of information about what makes the job a profession. And you'll find that some of those things don't pertain to teaching. But I would argue that we absolutely have to think of ourselves as professionals. Others like to think of us as technicians. Others think that teaching is easy, that it's just a matter of following a textbook or a given curriculum and telling kids what to do, and we all know that that's not what teaching is. Teaching is hard work. Teaching is finding the right tool for the right student at the right time. And then there's some mention about National Board of Professional Teaching Standards, board certification. This is really an important organization. It's a private organization, and it's also um, elective. So a teacher, after having been taught, taught for 3 years, can apply for national board certification. I'm opening my text so I can tell you what page it's on. It's not inexpensive. It's $2,500 to go through this process. And it's about a full year process. I know this because I'm a national board certified teacher, and I went through the process in 2007. Yes, I'm looking at my certificate on the wall. And it's not an easy process. It's very rigorous. You have to videotape yourself and analyze your lessons. You have to provide documentation of your professionalism and your professional development and your work with schools and communities and parents. You have to submit student work for reading and writing. For English, I'm certified in English. Excuse me. So I had to send samples of 2 students and explain, what these assignments were for and so forth. Very rigorous process and a very in-depth portfolio, as well as a standardized test. I had to sit for a 3-hour standardized test for my content area and non-pedagogy as well. So it's not a cheap and it's not an easy process, but I think it's a very important process because once a teacher is professionally certified this way, really gives him or her a real sense of being a professional. And so there are five core propositions for National Board Certification, and I'm just going to read them briefly. I think they're very important. Teachers are committed to students and their learning. Teachers know the subjects they teach and how to teach those subjects to students. Teachers are responsible for managing and monitoring student learning. Teachers think systematically about their practice and learn from experience. And teachers are members of learning communities. These are all very important, and these are things that you will strive for. Okay, and we're going to be using the main teaching standards for all education courses here at UMA, and those are comprised of the INTAS standards and the NETS-T standards. And so we can line those up with these national board standards as well. And so really what we're looking at is understanding the learner and the learning process, knowing your stuff and how to teach it and how to reach students. Remember, teaching isn't telling. Teaching is supporting and modeling and apprenticing and sharing and using all tools to reach all children. It's about knowing about learning environments, understanding how some students learn in different ways than others and how to create those environments for each child. It's about professional responsibility, about being a lifelong learner, about always seeking for the right tool, and being collegial, working well with others, and working with your peers, not only in your school, but beyond as well. Um, National and state memberships are extremely important. In the state of Maine, there are main chapters of the National Council of Teachers of Mathematics, of English, of Science, of Art, of Music. There's the Maine Association of Middle Level Educators. There's the Maine Reading Association. And there are more. Those are just a few. It's going to be very important for you to find an organization or two that you really can hook onto and use that organization as a way of helping you grow in your field. And then those are connected with national organizations as well, and those have extensive websites and resources to support you as a teacher. I belong to the National Council of Teachers of English because my initial certification is in ELA, and I've done many presentations and workshops at national conventions, sharing my work with others. And this is something that's absolutely was important to my work as a high school teacher and continues to be important to my work as a teacher of teachers. So do think about those core propositions and what they might mean to you. Okay, let me get my notes here. Okay, so there's a section here on how teachers are prepared today. And there's a bunch of different ways that teachers can become teachers. You know that because you're working in a kind of a little bit different situation than if you were going to a university that provides education degrees. So UMA does not provide an education degree, but we do offer pathways to teacher certification. So some of you who are in elementary education are pursuing that through a Bachelor of Arts of Global Studies with a self-designed minor in elementary education. That will get you your certification, but it is an alternative pathway. It's through transcript analysis. You are completing all the courses and the licensure exams and the student teaching that the state requires, and once your baccalaureate degree is conferred, if you've met all those requirements, you are eligible for a provisional certification. If you went to a school of education, you'd be doing the same kind of coursework, but the school would recommend you for certification. You wouldn't have to send in your transcripts. It's the same kind of deal. It's just the university is responsible for monitoring your transcripts and making sure that you have accomplished everything and that you are ready for teaching. The school talks about TFA, Teach for America. And I believe that what they're saying in here is quite biased. They're indicating that TFA teachers are quite effective, and it's a good way of getting teachers in the classroom, and I'm going to disagree with the text. And I can provide some resources to help support what I'm about to say. Most Teaching for America teachers do not stay beyond the 2 years that they're required to stay. All right, and let me just back up a bit. TFA are they recruit from high-level colleges like Yale and Harvard, Stanford, some of the bigger names, and others as well. And they give these college graduates 5 weeks of training, 5 people, just 5, and then put them into a classroom, generally urban, because that's where the need is. And they're required to commit for 2 years, and many of them do not stay. Most of them do not stay, let's put it that way. There's no safety net for these people. There's no due process. There's no union protection. It's very low pay compared to what teachers make. It's relatively poor working conditions because they aren't prepared for what they're going to encounter in an urban classroom. Even if they do stay, those that stay are extraordinary. They usually go on to get they have to go on to get their certification in order to stay a teacher. So they go through the same kinds of processes that you're going through right now. It's just on the back side instead of the front side. But generally, it's just not enough preparation to go into a classroom and deal with what they have to deal with. And so I would argue that we're doing our students a disservice by giving them unprepared teachers simply to fill a slot. And I will be happy to provide information. In fact, I will put up a couple of articles that address TFA. All right, then the last section I wanted to look at was these urban legends that often surround the teaching profession. One is that teachers are born, not made. Balderdash. I mean, mechanics aren't born, they have to learn their craft. Teachers have to learn their craft as well. Now, you may be born a caring, empathetic person, which will enhance your teaching for sure, okay? But for teachers to be born and not made, I think that's making a really broad statement. All you need to know is the subject you are teaching. I'm also going to argue against that, all right? I have had this experience with people who say, I have a master's degree in, I don't know, English. I'll pick on English because that's my content area. I have a master's degree in English so that I can teach. Why should I have to go through these teaching courses when I already know my stuff? Well, granted, you may know your stuff, but how do you know how to teach it? And then I'll get the argument, well, I've been teaching in college. Sure, college is the same as high school, right? No, it's not. Very, very different. And so it really is important for teachers to have both the content. Content knowledge is important, but the pedagogy is too. You have to know how to teach. If you go into a high school classroom and you stand up and start lecturing, for instance, like maybe one of your college professors did, you're going to be dead on your feet in about 2 minutes. And the same thing goes with elementary ed. You can have worked as an ed tech. You can have been a volunteer in your child's classroom, but that doesn't give you all the behind the scenes and all of the extras that teachers have to do. Okay, and so it's really important to not that the experience isn't good. It surely is, but the preparation is important as well. So content and pedagogy are both very important. Teacher education students are less talented. I think that sometimes the entry requirements for teacher education can be relatively low. I think sometimes that that's what gives this stigma to teachers. I'm all for raising the standards. In fact, I think we should raise the standards for teacher education. I think that would help professionalize our profession a little bit more if there were higher standards, more rigorous standards for entering the teaching profession. But I also know a lot of people who come from various diverse backgrounds who may not meet those rigorous standards who will be wonderful teachers. So there's a balance there in terms of entry level requirements. Um, Policymakers are not teachers. This is absolutely true, okay? You know, the people who tell us what to do are not teachers. And if you look at any of those think tanks that are just so prevalent out there now that are trying to tell everybody how bad we are or what we need to do, most of them are not teachers. They're policymakers. They're economists. They're lawyers. They're business people. And so what this does is it creates a teacher bashing climate, and we've seen that a lot in the last couple of years. I see a grassroots shift now, though. I see across the country that people are starting to talk back to this and to step up and say, wait just a minute. And we'll talk about that when we move. We look at reform, there's a chapter for education reform, and we'll look at that a little more closely when we get there. We only hear the bad or the the perceived bad. This is true. We don't always hear the good things that teachers do. We only hear the bad things. People jump on these test scores, and they don't always interpret them correctly. Statistics can be skewed in all kinds of different ways. So, you know, it's important to keep an open eye. And when you hear someone say, well, the United States is way below other countries, well, let's look at it in context and see what their education systems do, what ours do, what kind of affordances and constraints are available to our students and to those other students. Is you have to look at the big picture before you start looking at metrics. Okay, so I think that's it. I think that's all I wanted to say about this particular chapter. So you're going to read this chapter, and then you're going to also look at the teaching standards. I want you to start familiarizing yourself with those. Those are going to follow you throughout your coursework as a teacher, a candidate for a teacher certification. So do start looking at those. I don't expect you to study them intensely, although you do have 2 weeks. Remember, in my other video, I've elected not to have class meet next Monday for Martin Luther King Day, just because I want to give people a chance to get their books, get their feet under them, and get started. Oftentimes, the beginning of class, people are racing to catch up, and then it's hard to get caught up. I don't want that to happen. I want everybody to have a level playing field. So you're going to have 2 weeks to read that chapter, to read the standards and start to begin to understand those, and to introduce yourself. And please, when you introduce yourself, if you can give us a picture, that'd be great. If you do the little profile on Blackboard, it's going to show up as a little thumbnail picture every time you comment. So that's really a good thing. I love that, because then we get to see your face every time you comment, and it helps us to really make you a real person, not just a voice or a message out there in the ether. But if you want to attach a picture, that's great as well. I love seeing some of these pictures with children, your families, with pets, and so forth. And speaking of pets, you can see from the background here, I'm doing this from home. I often do these from home. I also do in my office. But I work pretty much 24/7, it seems. But anyway, I have a little pug who is a little yippy thing, and she's apt to bark every time she hears a noise. So you'll hear her. I'll let you meet her at some point in the semester. And I have 2 cats. One is very quiet, but the other one is very vociferous. She has part Siamese, and she'll just start howling behind me for no reason. And in the warm weather, this past summer, I was doing some recording out on my back deck because it's very lovely out there. And my husband keeps chickens, and I realized when I listened to the tape, you could hear the chickens clucking in the background. So the menagerie of Professor Dean's house will be part of your life, so I apologize for that. Or not. I mean, I think I kind of like, you know, the closeness and the connection, and getting to know all of you, and you should get to know me as well, all right? And anyway, so you're going to read the chapter, look at the standards, you're going to introduce yourself, and then you're going to participate in that discussion forum. This is a whole group discussion forum. There are 60 people in this class, as I mentioned before. You don't have to read everybody's post, although you can if you're committed. But you are going to respond to the prompt, and then you're going to respond to at least 2 people, okay? And try to be substantive, okay? I don't mean pages and pages, because then I'll have to read them all. You know, I want you to do enough so that you're engaging in the topic and not just dashing something off. And so I always say 125 words is kind of a good rule of thumb, but I'm not going to count every word. I can look at it and see that you've engaged in it or not. I can tell whether you've read it or not. I can tell whether you really, care about the topic or not. But do respond to a couple of your peers. And so that's it. So I welcome you again to the class. I'm looking forward to working with you. Please let me know if I can be of assistance in any way. You can call me, you can email me. I'm more than willing to support you in your endeavors. So have a really great day.